Hi everyone and welcome back to my kitchen. You know what, it's been a whole year and I was starting to miss you. So it's time for me to come back into the kitchen, but this time I'm on my own. I have no guests with me, so it's just gonna be me and you just cooking together, making some delicious home meals, some homemade food, which I think we're going to love and you can enjoy and you can share it with your friends and family. So I'm gonna start rambling now and we're gonna start cooking because I think it's time to get down to it. So my first recipe for today is a simple prawns au gratin. Now people have had these in restaurants, you can make it at home, I don't know if you've made it before, but just in case, I'm gonna let you know it's a really easy and simple recipe to do. So we're gonna start with the prawns and the spinach. We're gonna fry this up. All you need is a handful of spinach, some olive oil, and just a few prawns. You can get them frozen and raw, or you can just get them fresh and raw, as long as you make sure that you take off all the shells, you peel them and you devein them. So let's get started with frying the spinach and the garlic together to get the little base going, and then we're gonna cook the prawns. You know, I like to use olive oil with all my meals because it's very Mediterranean. So we add in the oil, we let this heat up a bit, and now we're gonna add in 1 garlic clove. Now the great thing about this recipe, which I'm sure you've all had before and you've all noticed, is that it's available in a lot of local restaurants. And I think a lot of people tend to love this because it's a starter, it's a main course, and you know, we're all a big fan of fish and seafood, so it's no surprise that people just love it. So we'll put this 1 garlic in there, nice and finely chopped. That's gonna start sizzling straight away. We're gonna flavor the oil is what we want to do. Flavor it with a bit of garlic, and we're gonna let the spinach reduce. Now I've got a bowl full of spinach here, but really a whole packet is what you might need depending how many people you make this for, because spinach reduces a lot and you're gonna end up with from a whole massive bowl to almost nothing. What will happen is that the spinach is going to release a lot of water and that's going to evaporate. If you see that it starts to shrink too much, just carry on adding more spinach until you see that you have enough. This is going to be enough for about, I'd say about 2 or 3 people, 1 large bowl of prawns au gratin, but you can keep going until you find that you have enough. But I find that at least half a packet is enough for about 3 people. So we'll just leave this there to cook, and then we'll get started with the next section, which is the bechamel. So we've only been here like 2 or 3 minutes, and as you can see, if you look down into the pan, you can see that the spinach has already started to shrink. It's going to get really soggy and floppy, and that's what we want, because that's the water just coming out. It's completely cooking. So we just want this to fry up with the garlic and just completely flavor. That's going to be absolutely delicious. And at this point, you can add in a little crunch of salt. That's going to really give it a touch. Once all of this has started to reduce, we're going to add in the prawns. So this cooks at the same time as the spinach, because it's going to release water as well, so we want it all to go at the same time. So we're going to add in about a handful. I say about 6 to 8 pieces for 2 or 3 people. So you can use your judgment how many prawns or how big your dish is, but I think that should be enough. You notice that the prawns start to cook when they go really pink. They might be grey when they're raw, then as they cook they go pink and they go slightly more as a whole colour, not so translucent. They shouldn't be translucent at all, otherwise that's when you know when they're raw. One important point to remember is not to overcook your prawns. The worst thing you can do to a prawn is to overcook it, because then it becomes really tense and really rubbery and it completely spoils it. So when you see that it's just changed colour, it's completely pink, take it off the heat, because we're going to finish all of this off in the oven, so that extra heat from the oven is going to just finish it off completely. So these have already changed colour. The prawns have started to shrink, which is also a sign that they're cooking. Prawns will shrink when you cook them. So try and get the biggest prawns you can, because otherwise you'll see that they're going to disappear. And we'll take this off the heat and put it to one side. And whilst that cools down, we're going to prepare the bechamel, which is going to be the cheesy, creamy topping that's going to be mixed with this. And it's going to make prawns au gratin what it is. The bechamel sauce is the key to this dish. Now, I love bechamel sauce and everyone has their different way of making it. I'm going to start off with the traditional way, which is butter and flour. We're going to fry that together. So we're going to add a dollop of butter. We're going to wait for this to melt. When that's melted, I'm going to add in plain flour. Now we're going to add in about a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of plain flour and fry this together. So you can just sprinkle that in and stir straight away. So we're going to do 1 tablespoon at a time, because the flour is going to clump, so we don't really want it to clump and get all horrible. So we're just going to stir this. Once you see the first bit is in, you'll add in the next part. Now I see that people have different tactics to this. Sometimes I add nutmeg because it gives it a really distinct flavor, especially when you're making lasagna or making that sort of thing. Nutmeg gives it that final oomph. Today I'm not going to add nutmeg, I'm just going to add the cheese and that's it, because we already have the flavor of the garlic and everything, which is going to be quite powerful. It's going to be enough. So when you start to see that it's becoming viscous and this is the sort of texture that you're seeing, we're going to add in the milk. I estimate around 500 milliliters of milk, but we'll slowly do this and we'll slowly mix it together. You want this to thicken up and to become like a creamy consistency. We're going to add in the cheese as well, so that will make it even creamier. So you want this to be runny, but not too ridiculously runny, if that makes sense. But always make sure to stir. Do not stop stirring, otherwise everything's going to clump and just ruin. Now that the butter, the milk and the flour are all mixed together, we're halfway there. This is the point where you want to add in the cheese. So I did about 200 grams of cheese. Between 200 and 300 should be enough. We're going to add this in and carry on stirring and melt it until it's really thick. The cheesier you want this, just add stronger cheese. You can add Parmesan, make it really, really cheesy and smelly. Or you can add like a really mature cheddar. But I find that a medium cheddar is enough for me for this. So just carry on stirring it until it all melts. And as it melts, it's going to get thicker and thicker. Okay. This bechamel sauce which I've made is one which I usually go to. Like I said, the nutmeg, sometimes without nutmeg. But I want to know what you add to this to make it your own. Do you add some fats? Do you add some spices that you make it differently? Let me know, because I always like to find out how each of you do your own dishes. So after about 3 minutes, the sauce is ready. As you can see, the cheese is melted, so this is now really thick. We can make it runnier if you add more milk, or you can make it even thicker if you add more cheese. I think at this point, this is enough. So this is the consistency that you want. If you want, you can add more milk and make it really runny. If you want to add more cheese, you'll make it even thicker. Now that is up to you. I like it sort of a medium sort of consistency where it still moves and it's not too thick. I'm gonna mix this now with the spinach, with the prawns and everything together. Make sure you stir it so that the mixture starts to go green, which is the spinach sort of color just coming loose and mixing with the bechamel together. You can start to smell all the flavors coming together, the cheese, the spinach, the prawns which have a really strong flavor and smell themselves, and the spinach which can sometimes even make a dish of its own, like with the salad and everything. So they're powerful flavors as it is. That's going to be mixed into a big ramekin dish, covered in cheese, and we're going to pop that in the oven for about 10 minutes until the cheese goes golden at about 170, 180 degrees. So once that comes out, you're going to have your very own prawns au gratin that you can dip some bread in, share with a family, have it as a starter for yourself if you're greedy, or just enjoy. So now we pour this into the ramekin. Make sure you spread it out evenly. You can use terracotta bowls as well if you find it easy. And when you think that you have had enough cheese and everything, we're going to add in even more, because this is going to go nice and golden and crisp on top and just give it that final delicious touch. That's delicious. Oh, that's beautiful. That's really cheesy, creamy. The prawns are nice and powerful, cooked and soft. They're not rubbery, which is perfect. And that spinach just gives it that final touch, which is really what this dish is all about. So I think I'm gonna just enjoy this with a bit of bread, finish this off, and then get started on the main course. After those beautiful prawns, I think it's time to stick with this fishy theme and make some Asian style sea bass. Now, fish is my favorite, sea bass especially because it's so easy to cook. So I think we should just go for it. So for this base, we're gonna slice everything and julienne everything. We're gonna get spring onions, garlic, chilies, a lime, and ginger. Now ginger is really what's going to be the strong sort of flavour in this dish. What's also going to give this a very strong flavour is the oil I use. I'm not going to use olive oil this time, I'm going to use sesame seed oil. So this is a very fragrant oil. It's of toasted sesame seeds, which gives it a really powerful flavour. You're going to smell it as soon as you open the bottle, and as it's cooking, it's really fragrant, it's really robust, and it's just going to make this dish what it is. So like I said, fish is really simple and versatile to make. Sometimes the simpler you make it, the better, but there are times when you want to try something different, because there are days when you just get bored of the ordinary, like everyone does. I'm not going to lie, because there's days where I'm tired of making the same meals over and over again. So it's great to experiment. Nowadays, we're all open to so many different cultures in Gibraltar, so why not experiment and see what's around you? Take inspiration from where you go to eat and try and make it your own, replicate it. That's the garlic. Do the same with one spring onion. Just going to cut the ends off. There really is no right or wrong to this. What I want to do with this is to keep all the different vegetables sort of visible. I don't want to hide anything. So we want big chunky diced bits, because this is going to fry and it's going to release all the flavour, but we also want it to be visible whilst you're eating it and mixing with the fish. Now I'm going to add chilies. I've got red chilies and green chilies. I usually buy the bigger green chilies. Since I didn't have any in the shop, I'm going to use these slightly smaller ones, which are going to be spicier. So instead of adding 4, I might add 3, I might add 2. We'll see as we go, because once you start cutting them, usually you can smell how spicy chilies are. And the best way to avoid burning yourself is to get rid of all the seeds, because the really spicy bits are in the seeds. So we'll slice them down carefully so you don't slice your fingers off. Just scrape out the seeds. You can leave a few, it doesn't matter, and then we're just gonna slice them. Don't make them too small. Like I said, you don't want to hide these. If anyone doesn't want to eat these afterwards, then it's easier to just pick out and leave to one side whilst you're eating everything. So we'll do with 3. They don't seem too bad. And a big important warning, do not touch your eyes. You will hurt yourself if you do. What we'll do with the ginger is we'll cut off the outsides. Now ginger is like really woody, it's really sort of dry, but as you cut it, you can start smelling it. This is the dish that's really going to be noticed around the house, because you can smell it for at least a day afterwards, because the sesame seeds, like I said, it's really strong, and the ginger is very powerful. Now all that our main vegetables are chopped, so we're going to start frying everything and create the base of this dish. So we're going to get the sesame seed oil, add it to the pan. Don't be worried, and just cover the entire pan, because you want as much oil as you can for this, because then we're going to fry the fish in it for a minute and pour it into the baking tray over the fish, cover everything together. So you want to sort of deep fry it in a sense. So heat up your oil. When it's just about bubbling, make sure to add in all your vegetables and fry everything. So we're going to add it all together and just stir it all together. So once you see that everything is frying and that the color's just about to start changing, we'll add in a bit of lemon rind, or a bit of lime rind in this case. That's going to add that citrus and zest and that spark that we need for this dish. So the vegetables have been frying in the sesame seed oil for about 2 or 3 minutes now. You can see that everything's changing color, so I think it's time to add in the lime. So we're going to cut out the lime rind, just a couple strips, and we'll just pour it in there. If you want to, you can also add in some lemon. Since I've got lemon here, we thought, why not? Let's add some more. That's going to fry in with everything and give out this zest, this citrus smell, and add that final touch to the fish. In the meantime, prep your fish. So we're going to grab the oven dish. We'll put it here on the side. We'll get our fish, which has been descaled, gutted, cleaned, washed. So a great thing to remember when you go to the fishmonger is to always check the eyes of your fish. The clearer the eyes, the fresher the fish. If they start to go really grey, really dark, then it's been there for maybe a day or 2. So try and always check that the eyes are as clear as possible. Get the fishmonger to clean it if you can. It's always easier. And we'll finish this off by pouring the oil over the fish. We're going to cover all of this up and put this in the oven for about 20-30 minutes. Check that the fish is cooked, and then we're going to take it off and grill it for 10 minutes so that the skin becomes all nice and crisp on top. So we've had this in the oven for about 20 minutes now. We're going to check that this is cooked. We're going to remove the foil, try not to burn ourselves while we do it, and then put it back in the oven under a grill as max heat as we can, just to crisp the top. So you want the skin to be nice and crisp and flaky before we serve this up and enjoy it. So that's what we're looking for. A crisp top. We want charred and grilled vegetables and the sauce to like sort of disappear because it's all going to be soaked up by the fish, and it's going to be ready to serve. So we'll get a plate, we'll fish out the fish. I'm going to try and keep it as whole as we can. So we do that, and you can see that the fish is really juicy and starts to flake off, comes the skin and starts falling apart. So you can just grab a bit and eat it right away. Beautiful. It's really juicy, really tender, and if you're careful enough to get the chilies, then you're going to get that kick of spice at the end, which is going to give that really, really nice final touch. So we'll finish this off, and then we'll get started with the dessert, which I've got chocolate mousse for you. That is going to really tingle your taste buds. So after 2 amazing recipes, I think it's time for dessert. And this is one of my favorites. If you're a big chocoholic like me, you're gonna love this. So let's get started. The first thing to do is whisk the egg whites. We're gonna make that into a really fluffy, stiff egg white peaks. That's gonna be the base of this because I'm making a chocolate mousse. Now, dark chocolate mousse with a touch of orange. First thing we need to do is egg whites. So get your egg whites, separate the yolk and the whites. That's easy enough to do. It's just crack and then pass them one shell to the other, making sure you don't break the egg yolk, because as soon as you get any egg yolk in there, you're not going to get any peaks. There are many different techniques you can do for this. You can crack the egg in there and using a water bottle, squeeze it and it comes out. Or you can pass it in through your fingers, and if you don't mind getting dirty hands, then that's absolutely fine. Right. And now we whisk. So make sure that you have a very clean bowl. There's nothing else in the bowl apart from the egg whites. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of trouble mixing this. Once you see that the eggs are getting really fluffy and it's starting to peak and they're going really white and foamy, which like this, which is what you want, you're going to add in a bit of lemon juice. So we're going to get a lemon, just cut it, and using your hand, just squeeze in a little bit of lemon juice. That's going to help this stiffen. And whilst we're whisking this now, we're going to add in some sugar. The sugar is going to make this really silky and really smooth. What we want to try and do is keep the air in there. We don't want to over whisk this, because once you over whisk this, it's almost impossible to get back. So this is what you're going to get, a really smooth, really fine meringue. Let me taste it. It's going to be really sweet. So the lemon's going to pasteurize the egg whites and help it stiffen, and that's what you're going to give you the really hard peaks and really silky smooth touch to this meringue. So we're going to melt the chocolate now in bain-marie style. What we'll do is heat up some water in a pan, place a bowl on top, and add your chocolate to the pan. There's nothing more to it than that. So we're going to add about 150 grams of 70% dark chocolate. Now, dark chocolate is my favorite because you add that with the orange and it's going to give you a really powerful flavor. You can save a bit for later because we're going to grate that on top. So at least as long as you save a cube or so, you're fine. We're going to leave this on top here with the heat on almost full so that you get all the heat coming up, and that's going to start melting the chocolate in the pan. If you're not a fan of dark chocolate, because I know not many people are, you can always just stick to milk chocolate. You can try white chocolate instead. That's going to give you a different flavor mousse. Obviously, the more milk, the runnier it's going to be. So we don't want the chocolate to be too runny. But once this is melted, we're going to grate in the orange in there and wait for this to cool down before we mix it with the eggs, because the last thing you want to do is mix hot chocolate here with the eggs, because then you're going to just cook them and end up with a horrible mess instead of a nice, tasty, silky smooth mousse. So once the chocolate's almost melted, you can take it off the heat, because the residual heat from the dish is going to just continue melting it. This is also a head start to let it cool down a bit faster. Just stir it until it all melts, and whilst that's sort of finishing off, thickening up, just grate in some orange. So the orange zest is really going to give this a punch. Once you've grated in all the orange, just make sure you stir it all together, or you'll realize that the orange is going to give off a really fragrant smell. So powerful, it's so fresh. Love it. Just make sure to mix it in here. As this cools down, you'll see that the chocolate thickens up. And when you feel that you can put your finger in and it's not going to burn you, then that should be cool enough to mix. A quick way of cooling this down is just to keep stirring it and folding it over itself. That way all the heat can escape faster and you can get your mousse done a lot bigger. So now what we're going to do is carefully fold in the chocolate with the meringue, and we're going to try as much as we can to keep all the air in there, or as much air as we can in there, because that's really what's going to give this that fluffy texture. And as you can see that you're mixing it, this is going to go more chocolatey, it's going to go lighter. So it might not look like it's mixing at first, but stick to it, and slowly and surely all the egg whites are going to mix with the chocolate, and you're going to end up with a really, really fluffy mousse consistency. One thing I should mention is, for those who don't like eggs, any vegans out there, you can also make this with aquafaba. So chickpea juice, in the jar of chickpeas, just separate that, keep the juice, and when you whisk the juice, you can end up with the same sort of consistency as an egg white meringue. Okay, when your ingredients are all mixed together and you see that the egg whites now are darker and more chocolatey, it's time to separate them. So I'm going to get 2 ramekins. We're going to add them in here, and we're going to carefully place this into the ramekin dishes. You should have enough for at least 2, 3, maybe even 4. Depends the size of your little ramekins. I think we should get away with 2 for this. So just be generous with this. Don't hold back. If you want this slightly runnier, when you're melting the chocolate, add a bit more milk, and that will just keep the chocolate a bit runnier, a bit looser, a bit more liquid, so that when you mix it with the egg whites, it's slightly more runny. But we don't want to lose the air, which is the important bit with this. And if you remember, we saved some chocolate at the end, so now you can finish this off with a shaving from the chocolate. Place this in the fridge, let it cool down, maybe an hour or so, and if you're really keen, leave it overnight if you can wait. Let that cool down so that it stiffens, it's going to remain fluffy, it's not going to lose any air, and then you can enjoy it for dessert. So that's it. We'll leave in the fridge, and any leftover chocolate you can just enjoy yourself. If you've had the patience to wait an hour or at least a few minutes for this to cool down in the fridge and to stiffen up, then I applaud you. But this is now the moment of truth. This is the fluffiest mousse I think you're ever going to have. Oh yeah. So it's silky, it's light, it's fluffy. The orange gives it that really big burst of zest, and the chocolate is so rich and so intense that it's just the most perfect little dessert that I adore. So I think I'm going to eat it all, and it's time for another bite. Oh yeah. There you go. So before I finish all of this by myself, I'm going to say thank you for joining me, and if you give these a try, give me a shout out online. I'm on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Lotties, and I'll see you all next week.